The war wasn't supposed to be fair. Everyone knew it. When the Atari fleets crossed into Sol space, they didn't bother with declarations or parley. They came with fire, plasma, and a single goal: to wipe humanity from existence before we could threaten their galactic dominion. Commander Jacob Holt watched the first wave from the bridge of the Vengeance, fists clenched behind his back. His ship was cold, silent, running dark beneath Saturn's rings, along with the rest of Battle Group Blackout. The fleet's orders had been clear: disappear, let Earth's outer colonies burn, and buy time to finish the project that had been in the works for nearly a decade, the Deadborn Initiative. Jacob had lost his home on Europa. His wife and son had been among the millions turned to glass when the Atari orbital bombardments struck. He hadn't cried. There was no time for tears in a war like this. The architects of genocide would get what they came for. And then some. The Atari had miscalculated. They thought humans were just another soft species, another set of biomass to sterilize. They didn't understand how much of Earth's history was written in blood and iron. They didn't know what desperation could forge. Jacob glanced at the chrono. The signal was coming soon. All across the fleet, captains were prepping for the moment. On a private comm line, Admiral Kestrel's voice came through. "Battle Group Blackout, engage!" Every ship's reactor spun up from cold start in a single brutal instant. The Vengeance shuddered as her engines roared to life, radiation alarms blinking red across the bridge. The crew didn't flinch. They'd trained for this. They wanted this. Jacob's voice cut through the ship's comms. "Weapons hot. All crews to combat stations. You know what they did to us. You know why we're here. Let's show these bastards what happens when you back a human into a corner." Across the fleet, the Deadborn ships unveiled themselves, massive, ugly constructs of human steel and rage. They weren't elegant like the Atari's sleek, curving cruisers. They weren't beautiful. They were designed to do one thing: kill everything that wasn't human. The Atari Advance Fleet was in Mars orbit, gorging on the ruins of the Martian colonies. They had no reason to expect an attack. Human defenses had crumbled. Until now. The first salvo from Vengeance's railguns screamed through space at 20% the speed of light. The Atari picket ships didn't even register the rounds before they punched through their hulls, vaporizing ships in brilliant bursts of radiation. And that was just the start. Jacob stood as the rest of Blackout Fleet emerged. 30 Dreadnought-class warships, each built with a neural interface allowing the captain to drive them like an extension of their own rage. They were fast. They were vicious. They didn't give the Atari time to regroup. Enemy transmissions burst onto open channels, shrieking alien commands, disbelief turning to panic. Jacob smiled grimly. "Too late," he muttered. "You should have finished the job." Within minutes, 5 Atari carriers were burning wreckage. Fighter wings launched in a chaotic scramble, but the human ships weren't here for a stand-up fight. They punched straight through the alien formations, ripping apart capital ships, then vanishing before counterstrikes could land. Every ship in Blackout had a kill count to settle. Every crew member had lost something. Families, friends, entire cities. The Atari were the universe's apex predators until now. One of Jacob's officers shouted, "Multiple Atari fleets inbound from Titan sector." Jacob's eyes gleamed. "Good. Let them come." The human fleet turned as one, like a pack of wolves scenting fresh blood. What had started as a war of extermination was about to become something else entirely. A hunt. Jacob leaned over the tactical display, watching the Atari response unfold in real time. Streams of hostile vessels, marked in crimson, were converging from Titan's orbital sector. Battle Group Blackout had torn a hole through their initial formation. But now the aliens were adapting. Fast. The Atari weren't stupid. They'd crushed dozens of species in their bloody rise through the stars. They had tactics bred into their bones. But that was the thing about humans. We weren't supposed to survive. And we'd done it anyway, again and again. "Range to incoming fleets?" Jacob asked. 70,000 clicks and closing, replied Lieutenant Grayson from the helm. His voice was tight, controlled, but there was an undercurrent of raw adrenaline there, the same thing pulsing through Jacob's own veins. "Status of blackout?" Jacob asked. "All ships report green. 0 combat losses so far. Ammo expenditure at 23%. Good." The Deadborn ships had been designed to fight outnumbered and outgunned. There wouldn't be any reinforcements from Earth. What remained of the Sol Defense Command was holed up protecting the Cradle world itself, praying the Yatari wouldn't punch through before the Deadborn could do their work. And that meant it was up to them, a single wolf pack in the black. Jacob studied the tactical plot. The Yatari were forming up in classic wedge formation, using heavily shielded command ships in the center, with screening cruisers and interceptor wings in tight layers around them. On paper, they were unbeatable. In practice, "We're going to break their line," Jacob said flatly. "Hard and fast." Grayson turned slightly. "Through the center?" "Right through their fucking heart." The crew didn't question it. They knew Jacob. They knew what he'd lost. And they knew the nature of the ships they served aboard. Vengeance and her sister ships weren't built to trade broadsides at range. They were knife fighters, brawlers, monsters of close-in warfare that used sheer human aggression to overcome alien precision. "Signal the fleet. We'll go in staggered echelon formation, heavy lead with fast strikers on the flanks. No clean battle line. We're going to look like chaos itself. They won't be able to process the movement fast enough." Orders flashed across encrypted channels. Human ships began to shift, forming an irregular, broken arrow of steel and fury. To an alien tactician, it would look like a panicked assault, undisciplined, wild. But in reality, every vector had been calculated to play to the Deadborn's strengths: brutal acceleration, redundant systems, and unmatched short-range firepower. "Enemy fleet within 50,000 clicks." Jacob's hands curled into fists behind his back. This was the moment. The bridge was silent save for the hum of systems and the soft tones of sensor updates. The crew barely breathed. He opened the ship-wide communication. "This is Commander Holt. You all know why we're here. You've seen what they did to our worlds, our people, our families." He took a breath. "We're not just defending humanity today. We're proving that no matter what they throw at us, no matter how many ships, no matter how advanced they think they are, they will remember that humans are not prey. We fight, we endure, and we kill." The words weren't rehearsed. He didn't need them to be. They were truth. He cut the comm, locked eyes with Grayson. "Take us in." Engines roared. Across the black human ships surged forward like a pack of feral predators. The Yatari opened fire first, long-range energy lances flaring through the void. Plasma bolts slammed into the Deadborn ship's layered armor and kinetic deflection fields. Sparks flew, hulls groaned, but the human war machines kept coming, faster, angrier. "First contact in 20 seconds. Jacob's pulse hammered in his ears. His ship wasn't beautiful. It wasn't perfect, but it was deadly. Every weapon port opened. Every gun cycled hot. At 10,000 clicks, they returned fire. Railguns unleashed tungsten death. Hypervelocity missiles lanced out in dense clouds, guided by AIs stripped of every safety protocol. Point defense lasers stitched through the black, carving up Yatari fighters that tried to close in. And then they were inside the enemy formation. Vengeance screamed through the heart of the Yatari wedge, guns blazing in every direction. Jacob felt the deck vibrate with every impact and return shot. He was jacked into the tactical net, seeing the battle unfold in raw, brutal clarity. Yatari command cruisers were massive, elegant crescent shapes bristling with weaponry, but they couldn't track targets moving this fast, this close. Vengeance skimmed past one at less than 200 meters, releasing a full spread of magnetic mines and canister warheads. The alien ship erupted in fire and atmosphere, bleeding out into the void. All ships, stay aggressive, don't give them space to regroup. Across the net, human voices answered, hard, angry, determined. Revenant executing close pass. Hammerfall engaging enemy dreadnought. No quarter is hit. Secondary system still green. Continuing attack run. The Yatari wedge crumbled. Without distance to coordinate, their fleet dissolved into a brawl. Something they weren't built for. Human ships thrived on it. They moved like predators in a feeding frenzy, hitting and fading, tearing into exposed flanks and isolated ships. Jacob watched as another Yatari carrier tried to break off, vectoring toward open space. Grayson, give me pursuit vector, target lock. Locked in, firing solutions ready. Jacob's mouth was a grim line. Kill it. Vengeance surged after the fleeing vessel, railguns hammering round after round into its engines. The carrier shuddered, staggered, then ruptured in a wave of internal explosions. Another kill, another score settled, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. New contacts, shouted the sensor officer. Reinforcements, heavy Yatari battlecruisers inbound from outer Saturn orbit. ETA 5 minutes. Jacob's eyes narrowed. The aliens were throwing everything they had. They couldn't afford to let humans have this victory, not after the slaughter Blackout had just unleashed. He switched to fleet-wide communication. You've done good work, but this isn't over. They're coming in hard. We hold this ground. We show them that humans don't break. The replies came fast, furious. Copy that. Standing by for next wave. Let's bleed 'em. Jacob looked around his bridge crew. Tired, bruised, but burning with purpose. These weren't soldiers anymore. They were wolves. He took a breath. Rearm secondary batteries. Cycle reactors to combat overdrive. I want all systems prepped for sustained engagement. Vengeance turned back toward the incoming threat. Scars and burn marks along her hull, but engines still roaring with fury. Across the void, the battered remains of the Yatari first wave drifted in ruin. And beyond them, the next storm gathered. Jacob smiled, cold and hard. Let's see if they've got the stomach for it. The war was far from over, but one thing was certain. The galaxy would never again underestimate humanity's will to survive, or its capacity for vengeance. The enemy was coming fast. Too fast. Jacob gripped the edge of the tactical station as fresh crimson signatures painted themselves across the display. Wave after wave of Yatari heavy battle cruisers, far more than initial estimates. They were panicking. That made them dangerous. Grayson's voice came through low and tight. 37 confirmed incoming. Multiple carrier-class vessels, heavily shielded. They've burned their safeties, pushing max reactor output. They want this over, Jacob said flatly. They don't want us surviving to pull this trick again. The remains of the first Yatari fleet were drifting wreckage now, battle litter scattered across the black. Blackout had mauled them, but it had cost them too. The Revenant was limping, trailing plasma. 2 ships had gone completely dark. No response, and Vengeance herself had taken hits. But Jacob wasn't about to retreat. Not after this. Not after the blood debt that needed to be paid. Comms, patch me to Admiral Kestrel. There was a burst of static. Then the iron voice of the fleet admiral filled the bridge. Go ahead, Holt. Enemy's bringing the hammer down. If we fall back now, they'll chase us right to Earth. A pause. Then, agreed. Jacob let out a slow breath. Permission to execute Razor Net. Another pause. That wasn't a standing order. It was a kill tactic, one that meant staying in the fight longer than sane commanders would dare. Kestrel's reply was sharp and clear. Granted. Make them bleed. Jacob smiled coldly. Aye, sir. He cut the channel and turned back to his crew. You heard it. We're executing Razor Net. Signal the fleet. Spread formation. Deploy mines, decoys, and smart dust. No straight lines, no predictable paths. We're going to turn this whole sector into a goddamn meat grinder. Orders shot out. Across what remained of Battle Group Blackout, ships fanned outward, not running, but weaving, laying down a shifting, invisible web of kinetic traps and interference drones. Vengeance dropped a spread of auto-mines behind her, each one laced with nanite-guided shrapnel designed to tear through Yatari shielding at close range. The crew worked in a fury, sweat gleaming on faces, eyes burning with purpose. They weren't going to die today, not quietly. Enemy within 20,000 clicks! Jacob slammed a fist into the arm of his command chair. Weapons free! Fire at will! Vengeance lit up like a star going nova. Railguns screamed. Hypervelocity rounds punched through space. Missile tubes belched wave after wave of swarmers, their drives flaring hot and fast. The Yatari response was a brutal wall of plasma and directed energy, beams slicing the void, annihilating anything caught in their path. But Blackout ships didn't give them targets to lock onto. They danced, slid, hunted. Jacob's blood roared in his ears as Vengeance dove through the storm, flinging kinetic death at point-blank range. The first enemy battlecruiser exploded under concentrated fire, its shield generators overloaded, hull cracking open like an egg. But the aliens didn't break this time. They closed ranks, pressed harder, their formation compact and deadly. Brace! Incoming! A blast of plasma slammed into Vengeance's side, flaring across armor and shields. Systems flickered, warning klaxons shrieking. Damage report, Jacob barked. Portside armor degraded. Auxiliary power grid cycling. We're still in the fight. Good. Keep us on them. The bridge crew moved like one body now. No hesitation, no fear. They'd bled the enemy once. They'd do it again. Then came the next wave of chaos. Mines began triggering. Yatari ships plowing through the razor net, losing shields, venting atmosphere one after another. The aliens had no counter. Human desperation had birthed new horrors. Jacob locked onto a second carrier, trying to slip through the carnage. Target acquired. All batteries. Burn that bastard down. Vengeance unleashed hell, concentrated fire stripping shielding, punching into the ship's guts. The carrier staggered, secondary explosions tearing it apart. Cheers erupted across the bridge, but Jacob kept his voice sharp. Stay focused. We're not done. Then a cold voice cut across the fleet-wide channel, Admiral Kestrel herself. New intel. Yatari Super Dreadnought is inbound. It's not part of the current wave. It's coming in from deep orbit. Estimated arrival, 5 minutes. Jacob's jaw clenched. A Super Dreadnought, a ship designed to erase planets. If it got close, Earth would be done. Kestrel continued. We cannot allow that ship to reach firing position. Blackout. Do what you do best. Stop it. Jacob looked at his battered crew. You heard the lady. Grayson swallowed hard. Commander, we're bleeding. If we hit that monster... Jacob's voice was steel. We have to. You think the Yatari will leave survivors? If they take Earth, we're extinct. The crew nodded. No more arguments. Just grim resolve. Helm, plot intercept course. Engines to full burn. Signal Revenant, Hammerfall, Iron Reaper. We'll spearhead the assault. Vengeance banked hard, engines howling, streaking through the burning wreckage of the current battle. The fleet reformed, what was left of it, a pack of wounded wolves racing toward the greater threat. As they closed the distance, the super dreadnought came into sensor range. It was massive, kilometers long, layered in black alloy, bristling with weapons arrays that could split moons. A weapon of genocide. Jacob's mouth twisted. That thing's not leaving the sector alive. Kestrel's voice cut in one last time. Blackout. No retreat, no surrender. Kill that ship. Jacob opened the ship-wide comm again, voice low and brutal. This is Commander Holt. You all know what's coming. You know what's at stake. If we fall here, Earth dies. If that ship fires, everything we love burns. He paused, voice hardening. But if we hit it first, if we bleed it, if we cripple it, we buy our people a future. He looked across the faces of his crew, sweat-streaked, battered, determined. No one blinked. Jacob's voice was a growl. So lock in. No hesitation, no mercy. We are human. We do not fucking die easy. The crew roared back. Hey! Vengeance surged forward, leading the charge, straight at the heart of the enemy's superweapon. Jacob's heart pounded. One way or another, this battle would decide the future of humanity. And by God, if he was going down, he'd take a piece of the enemy with him so deep they'd remember his name for 1,000 years. The super dreadnought was a monster. On the tactical display, it filled nearly a quarter of the screen. Black alloy, kilometers long, bristling with energy capacitors and mass drivers the size of city blocks. Its hull was layered with a kind of reactive armor the Atari normally reserved for planetary assault platforms. This wasn't just a warship. It was a statement. A weapon to break the spirit of any species stupid enough to resist their rule. Jacob stood at the center of Vengeance's bridge, cold-eyed, steady. Around him, the crew worked in practiced silence. There was no need for speeches now. They all understood. This was the knife's edge. If they failed to cripple the super dreadnought before it reached firing range of Earth's orbital bastions, the war would be over. The Atari would glass the planet, sterilize it, and move on. No survivors. No future. And there wasn't another human fleet left in Sol space capable of stopping it. Helm, Jacob ordered, voice sharp. Plot a converging course with Revenant and Iron Reaper, fast vector. I want us inside their outer engagement zone before they can fully power those mass drivers. Aye, Commander. Burn plotted, firing main engines. Vengeance surged forward, main drive flaring hot against the black. The stars blurred. Around her, the battered remnants of Blackout Fleet came with her. Fewer than 20 ships now, some limping, hulls torn, weapons damaged. But none turning back. The first Yutari counterformation was already moving to intercept, heavy cruisers and fast interceptors sweeping out like armored sharks. Jacob knew they'd try to delay the human ships, buy time for the super dreadnought's primary batteries to charge. He wasn't about to give them that luxury. Weapons. Load full spread of magnetically guided penetrators. Primary railguns. Target lead interceptors. We punch through, hard and fast. No dogfighting. Aye, sir. All weapons hot. Comms, Signal Revenant and Iron Reaper. Initiate hammerhead pattern on my mark. We're going straight through these bastards. The reply came sharp and fast. Acknowledged, Vengeance. Ready to roll. Jacob let out a slow breath. He could feel the tension in the air, thrumming in his blood. This was the kind of fight he'd been born for. Not a clean duel, not fleet doctrine, a brawl, a knife in the dark. Mark, he shouted. Vengeance tipped forward into her attack run, railguns firing in murderous sequence. Hypervelocity rounds tore into the first wave of Yutari interceptors, blowing them apart mid-approach. Enemy plasma beams flashed back, hammering Vengeance's forward shields. The ship shuddered violently, warning klaxons screaming. Shields at 63%! Keep firing! Jacob snapped. Drive us right down their damn throats! Blackout's surviving ships followed, weaving through the hellstorm. Too fast, too erratic for the Atari to lock down. Iron Reaper slammed through the flanks of a cruiser formation, its broadsides ripping hulls apart. Revenant drove headlong into the center of the screen, point defense guns blazing, fighters pouring out to harass enemy formations. The human fleet was a pack of wolves now, scarred, wounded, but biting back with savage fury. Jacob gritted his teeth as another blast rocked Vengeance, sending sparks flying from a nearby console. Engineering, status. Minor hull breaches, port side, auto seals holding, we can take it. Good, they'd have to, because now the super dreadnought was powering its main batteries. Commander, Grayson called from the sensor station, voice grim. We're reading full charge buildup on enemy spinal mass driver. Estimated time to fire, 4 minutes. Jacob's jaw clenched. 4 minutes. That was the window. Either they crippled it now, or Earth died. He switched to fleet-wide comms, voice cutting through the chaos. All blackout units, push through. Target priority is the dreadnought's primary generators and weapons mounts. We bleed it now, or we die with the rest of our species. The responses came back, grim and fierce. Copy that. On your lead. Let's end this. Vengeance broke free of the outer enemy screen, hull scorched and battered. The super dreadnought loomed ahead now, so close its navigation lights could be seen with the naked eye. Jacob's blood roared in his ears. There was no turning back. Helm, bring us in low under their primary battery line. All guns, fire at will. The Vengeance dove like a raptor, railguns and missile tubes unleashing everything they had. The first salvo smashed into the super dreadnought's dorsal shielding, lighting it up with blinding energy flares. Return fire raked across Vengeance's flanks, pulse beams slicing armor, venting atmosphere from ruptured compartments. Damage on decks 4 and 6, a tech shouted. Multiple casualties reported. Jacob's voice was ice. Seal the decks. We keep fighting. Iron Reaper came in behind them, pouring concentrated fire into the enemy's shield nodes. Explosions rippled across the dreadnought's flanks. Its shields flickered, then began to fail in sections. But time was running out. The mass driver was still charging, power levels spiking higher. Grayson, Jacob barked. Find me a shot. Where's their primary generator array? Grayson's fingers flew across the console. Target identified. Ventral array, just aft of the second forward stabilizer. It's lightly armored. Helm, plot an attack vector. Bring us under her belly. Vengeance banked hard, drives screaming as she dove beneath the super dreadnought's massive hull. Close now, so close they could see the seams in the enemy armor. Firing solution locked. Jacob didn't hesitate. All batteries, fire! The ship unleashed a brutal point-blank broadside, railgun rounds slamming into the exposed generator housing, missiles corkscrewing into vulnerable seams. The super dreadnought's armor buckled, internal detonations ripping through its power grid. The enemy ship convulsed, main lights dimming, mass driver charge levels plummeting. Across the bridge of Vengeance, the crew roared in triumph. But Jacob didn't celebrate yet. His eyes were locked on the tactical feed, seeing the enemy trying desperately to stabilize. They're rerouting power, Grayson warned. They'll be back online in under 2 minutes. Not if we gut them first, Jacob growled. Helm, bring us around again. We'll cut this monster to pieces if we have to. Vengeance clawed for another attack vector, the rest of Blackout hammering at the dreadnought from every angle. Jacob's pulse hammered. This was it. The last stand. If they could just land one more crippling blow. All guns, target ventral weapons clusters, keep firing. The ship bucked under the strain, alarms blaring, but the crew kept fighting, every man and woman driven by the same fury. Earth would not fall today. Jacob's voice rang out one last time. We finish this now! The Vengeance groaned under the strain of sustained combat. Bulkheads vibrated, Smoke vented from damaged conduits. Jacob stood like stone at the center of the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical display as if willing the enemy to die. The super dreadnought was hurt. Badly. Its ventral shielding had failed. Power surges were blooming across its massive hull. But it wasn't dead yet. No Yatari war machine went down easy, especially not one designed to exterminate planets. "We've got partial shield collapse on their port quarter," Grayson called, sweat streaking his temple. "But they're still rerouting power. Main mass driver charge creeping back up." "How long?" Jacob asked flatly. 2 minutes, maybe less." Too close. Jacob's mind raced. They'd already driven deeper into this fight than sane fleet doctrine would ever allow. Half the surviving blackout ships were crippled. Iron Reaper was venting atmosphere, still firing but barely alive. Revenant had lost her entire starboard battery, and Vengeance herself. Jacob knew they couldn't take another full hit. Not from the Dreadnought's secondary weapons, not at this range. But retreat wasn't an option. Not now. Not with Earth still hanging in the balance. "Helm," he ordered, voice razor sharp. "Vector us tight under their port axis. We'll target their auxiliary power nodes directly. Overload their core if we can." "Sir, bringing us that close means they can hit us with their point defenses." Jacob's jaw flexed. "Then we'll take the hits. We get in close, we gut them. Understood?" "Aye, Commander." The crew didn't question it. They couldn't afford doubt. Not here, not now. Vengeance rolled hard, engines pushing her battered frame into another furious dive beneath the enemy ship. All around her, the shattered remnants of Blackout followed. Wolves circling a wounded Leviathan. Enemy fire raked the void. Plasma beams flashed past Vengeance's bow, missing by meters. Autocannon bursts hammered their forward plating, sparks flying from the armored hull. "Forward shields collapsing," a tech shouted. "We're down to 30%. "Hold us steady," Jacob barked. "Weapons, ready full spread of antimatter warheads. We're going for a core breach." "Aye, sir. Warheads cycling hot." Grayson's voice came again, tight and fast. "Target lock on auxiliary node confirmed. Vector locked." Jacob slammed a fist into the arm of his chair. "Fire!" Vengeance unleashed her payload, antimatter warheads streaking forward in burning arcs, guided by the ship's last operational targeting AIs. Time slowed. The warheads hit. A chain of explosions ripped through the super dreadnought's side, plasma fountains geysering from ruptured conduits. Secondary detonations cascaded along the port axis. Hull plating peeled back like paper. Jacob's breath caught as the mass driver's charge level suddenly spiked and then plummeted, readings flatlining. Grayson shouted, "Core breach! Their entire power grid is destabilizing." For the first time in the battle, a grim smile tugged at Jacob's mouth. "Pull us out," he ordered. "All ships, clear the kill zone. That bastard's about to blow." Vengeance heeled hard over, drives flaring as she clawed for distance. Around her, the tattered survivors of Blackout did the same. Ships burning, barely holding together, but alive. Behind them, the super dreadnought convulsed, internal fires raging unchecked. Explosions rippled the length of its vast hull. Then came the death blow, its main reactor breaching in a flash that outshone the stars. A shockwave tore through the void, battering Vengeance and the fleeing fleet. Jacob gripped the edge of the console as the ship bucked violently. Then silence. Static filled the comms for a beat. Then Grayson's voice came through, ragged but exultant. "Target destroyed. The dreadnought is gone." Around the bridge, stunned looks met Jacob's gaze. They'd done it. Against every expectation, every odd, they'd killed the Yatari's most powerful weapon. But Jacob wasn't celebrating. Not yet. "Comms," he snapped. "Get me Admiral Kestrel. Now." It took precious seconds before the battered signal finally connected. Kestrel's image flickered onto the main display. Blood streaked across her face, bridge crew moving frantically behind her. "Commander Holt," she said, voice grim. "Report." "Enemy super dreadnought destroyed. Sector is clear for now." A long pause. Then Kestrel gave the faintest of nods. "You've done the impossible, Holt. Earth owes you its survival." Jacob's jaw tightened. "The war isn't over. They'll send more." "Yes." Kestrel's gaze hardened. "But not today. Today, you bought us time. And hope." Jacob glanced around his bridge. His crew was battered, exhausted, but alive. "For now." Kestrel's voice came again. "Blackout Fleet, return to Sol Defense Perimeter. Immediate repairs. We'll need every ship for what's coming next." "Aye, Admiral." Jacob saluted sharply. "We'll see you at the line." The transmission cut. Jacob stood there for a long moment, the weight of the battle settling in. Then he turned to his crew, voice low but clear. "You heard the orders? Plot course for Earth orbit. We'll patch the ship together and be ready when they come." A chorus of weary affirmatives filled the bridge. As Vengeance turned toward home, her hull scorched and broken, but her spirit unbowed, Jacob allowed himself one fleeting thought. They'd wanted to exterminate humanity. Instead, they'd taught the galaxy to fear human ships and the men and women who crewed them. And this war, it was far from over. The battered wreck of Vengeance drifted into Earth orbit 4 hours later, under heavy escort from what remained of Blackout Fleet. They weren't a formation anymore, not in the traditional sense. They were survivors, scarred ships, scorched armor, jury-rigged systems barely holding together, and they'd come home not in triumph, but in grim defiance. Jacob stood on the bridge, helmet off now, sweat-soaked hair matted to his scalp, eyes red from smoke and adrenaline. Earth hung in the viewport ahead, a blue and white jewel that could have already been ash if they'd failed. But they hadn't. Not this time. "Approaching Sol Defense Perimeter," Grayson reported, voice hoarse. He hadn't left his post in 16 straight hours. None of them had. "We're cleared for emergency dock at Fortress Station Atlas." Jacob gave a nod. "Helm, bring us in." Across the comm channels, battered voices called in similar reports. Iron Reaper limping in with half her decks open to vacuum, Revenant under tow, damage control teams barely keeping her reactor stable. But they were alive. And the Atari Super Dreadnought was gone. Wreckage still scattering through Saturn's orbit like a grim warning to the enemy. Humans weren't prey. "Commander," came a call from comms. "Incoming priority message, Admiral Kestrel, direct channel." Jacob straightened. "Put it through." Kestrel's face appeared on the main display, tired, bloodied, but focused as ever. Her eyes locked onto Jacob's. "Well done, Holt. You and your crews did what no one thought possible." Jacob shook his head slightly. "It wasn't just me, Admiral. Blackout paid in blood for this one." Kestrel gave a nod of grim acknowledgement. "I know, and you're not finished yet." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "Understood." She leaned forward slightly. "Intercepted Yatari transmissions confirm what we feared. The destruction of their dreadnought didn't break them. It enraged them. They're rallying every fleet element within 3 systems of Sol. Massive strike force inbound. ETA 72 hours. Jacob exhaled slowly. No surprise. He'd known this was coming. The Yatari didn't believe in defeat. They'd throw everything they had now, determined to finish the extermination they'd started. "They'll try to overwhelm Earth's defenses before we can rebuild," Kestrel continued. "We won't have reinforcements for weeks. It's us, Commander." Jacob gave a sharp nod. "We'll be ready." Kestrel's voice was steel. I need your fleet back in fighting shape. You've got 48 hours for repairs. After that, every gun we have goes to the line. Understood. The channel cut. Silence settled over the bridge. The war wasn't over. The worst was yet to come. Jacob drew a long breath, then turned to his crew. You heard it. 48 hours. Get us patched. If the Yutari want another fight, they'll get one. The docking at Fortress Station Atlas was rough. Vengeance barely fit the cradle with her damaged frame. Automated tugs latched on, pulling her into place as damage crews swarmed the hull. Jacob left the bridge for the first time in hours, moving stiffly through smoke-blackened corridors toward the command deck. His body ached, bruises, burns, exhaustion clawing at him. But none of it mattered. Not until the next fight was done. The station corridors were chaos, techs sprinting, med teams hauling wounded, alarms blaring at intervals. Earth's defenders were running on fumes now, scrambling to prepare for the Yutari's next hammer blow. In the central operations chamber, Jacob found Admiral Kestrel already briefing what remained of the fleet's senior officers, a grim-faced collection of veterans and survivors. Kestrel looked up as Jacob entered. Her voice didn't waver. Commander Holt, good. You're here. Jacob saluted, then took his place at the table. The holodisplay in the center showed the grim reality. Projected Yutari fleet vectors converging on Sol, dozens of attack groups, carriers, heavy cruisers, likely more dreadnought-class vessels. Intel confirms their intentions, Kestrel said flatly. This is an extermination strike. No demands, no negotiations. They mean to finish us, for good. A cold silence filled the room. They all knew what that meant. Kestrel's gaze swept the room. I won't lie. Our chances are thin. We've lost 2/3 of our heavy fleet. Orbital platforms are still rearming. The planetary defense grid was never built for this scale of assault. She paused. But we have one advantage. The display shifted, showing the wreckage of the destroyed super dreadnought. They didn't expect us to fight like this, to bleed them like this. The Yutari think we're beaten, but we're not. And if we can break their first wave, if we can show them Sol won't fall easy, we buy time. Maybe enough time for reinforcements to reach us. Jacob's voice was low, but steady. We'll make them pay. Kestrel nodded once. You will. Blackout Fleet will spearhead the outer defense. You know their tactics now. You've survived them. I want vengeance and what's left of your ships in a hunter role. Fast strikes, bleed them, disrupt their formations. Keep them off balance. Jacob straightened. We'll be ready. Good. Kestrel's gaze hardened. Because if we lose this fight, there won't be another. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic work. Repair crews swarmed Vengeance's battered frame, sealing breaches, patching scorched armor, swapping out fried weapon systems. Jacob barely left the ship, moving deck to deck, overseeing every repair, every prep. His crew worked like demons, fueled by grim purpose. There was no talk of survival, no false hope, just the certainty of what was coming, and the will to meet it head-on. In the armory, Jacob checked weapons himself, rifle in hand, sidearm holstered. If the ship went down, he meant to fight until the last breath. Grayson found him there, armor half-donned, eyes bloodshot. Commander, final systems check complete. We'll be flight-ready in 4 hours. Jacob gave a tight nod. Good work. Grayson hesitated. Sir, when they come, it's going to be worse than Saturn. Jacob met his gaze, voice cold and calm. Then we'll fight worse, and we'll kill worse. Grayson straightened. Aye, Commander. By the time the first Yutari scout ships breached Sol's outer boundary, Vengeance was spaceborne again. Scarred, rebuilt, weapons hot. Jacob stood on the bridge as Blackout's tattered fleet reformed around them, ready for war. Across the comms, Admiral Kestrel's final orders came through. Enemy vanguard approaching. All units to combat stations. Hold the line. No retreat. No surrender. Jacob looked around his bridge crew, men and women who'd already stared death in the face and were ready to do it again. He drew a slow breath. You heard her. This is our stand. If they want Earth, they'll have to burn through us first. The crew roared back. Aye, Commander! Vengeance surged forward, drives flaring, guns armed, leading Blackout into the black one more time. And as the stars filled with hostile fire once again, one truth burned in Jacob's heart. This war wasn't over, not while any human still drew breath. The stars were no longer stars. They were weapon signatures, hard contacts and hostile energy blooms lighting the void. The first Yatari Vanguard wave had entered Sol space. They came in fast, organized, an overwhelming tide of ships converging on Earth from multiple vectors, and Blackout Fleet, what remained of it, was racing straight for them. Commander Jacob Holt stood at the heart of Vengeance's bridge, armor strapped over his worn uniform, helmet clipped to his belt. His crew was locked in, faces pale but steady under the dim red combat lighting. They all knew what was at stake. Enemy forward elements crossing the perimeter, Grayson reported, voice low. 70 contacts confirmed, mix of heavy cruisers and long-range artillery platforms. They're feeling us out, Jacob said, testing the line. Grayson nodded. More behind them. Main fleet still inbound. Estimated contact in 6 hours. 6 hours. The largest Yatari strike force humanity had ever faced. But first, this vanguard, meant to punch holes, shatter defenses, clear the way for the kill stroke. Jacob's jaw flexed, not on his watch. He keyed the fleet-wide channel, voice cutting through the static. All Blackout units, this is Commander Holt. You know what they're sending. You know what happens if we fail. He looked around his bridge crew, voice steel. But we're still here. They thought they could erase us, but we've buried their best already. Today we bury more. The reply came back, a chorus of hardened voices from every battered ship. Aye, we fight! Let's make 'em bleed! Jacob switched to Vengeance's tactical channel. Helm, bring us in fast, vector around the lead elements. Weapons, priority on artillery platforms. We take their range advantage away. Close and kill. Aye, Commander. Vengeance surged forward. Blackout fleet spreading around her in ragged formation. They were outnumbered, outgunned. But they were hunters now, not prey. And Jacob had one rule for this battle. Never fight on their terms. Contact. First enemy screen closing, Grayson called. Range, 30,000 clicks. Engage at will, Jacob snapped. Vengeance's railguns hammered out the opening salvo, hypervelocity rounds slamming through space at near-relativistic speeds. The first Yatari cruiser shuddered under impact, shields flaring, hull plates tearing away. Return fire lanced toward them, plasma beams searing past Vengeance's hull, close enough to make the ship shudder with near misses. Brace! Another enemy beam struck their port side, shields flaring dangerously low. Shields at 47%. Keep moving, Jacob barked. We hit them, we fade. Don't give them a clean shot. Vengeance rolled and dove, drives howling, ripping through the first Yatari screen at brutal speed. Her guns spoke again, ripping apart another cruiser in a burst of venting atmosphere and molten metal. Across the Blackout ships joined the slaughter. Iron Reaper hammering through a cluster of artillery ships with savage broadsides. Revenant launching torpedoes straight through the heart of an enemy wedge. But the Yatari weren't breaking. Not yet. New enemy wing incoming. Fast interceptors. Jacob's eyes narrowed. We hold formation. Prioritize point defense. Don't let them pin us. Vengeance's hull-mounted cannons spat rapid bursts, shredding the first wave of incoming fighters. But more kept coming, streaming toward them like a swarm of metal locusts. Multiple impacts. Decks 3 and 5. Damage control. Contain and seal, Jacob ordered, voice hard. We stay in this fight. The ship shuddered again, an enemy interceptor slamming directly into her starboard side, detonating on impact. Alarms blared. Fire on deck 5, emergency bulkhead sealed. Jacob's knuckles whitened on the command rail. Too close. Helm. Cut hard vector, take us under their formation. We bleed them from below. Vengeance dove again, sweeping beneath the thickest concentration of enemy ships. Her railguns fired point blank, punching through exposed hulls. A Yatari artillery platform erupted in a cascade of secondary explosions, lighting the void in a bloom of fire. Target down, Grayson shouted. But still more Yatari were coming, wave after wave. Jacob keyed the fleet channel again, voice like iron. We keep hitting them, close and fast. Don't let them get clean formations. Every enemy ship we kill now weakens their main strike. We break this vanguard. We buy Earth another day. And the battered, furious remnants of Blackout answered, Hey, Commander! The battle raged for hours. Black space turned into a blazing hell of debris and shattered hulls. Vengeance fought like a wounded beast, armor scorched, decks burning, but guns still firing. Jacob barely noticed the blood running from a cut above his brow, too focused, too driven. Commander, Grayson called, voice strained. Enemy vanguard breaking. Main elements pulling back. Jacob's eyes snapped to the display. The Yatari line was faltering, scattered formations retreating toward their own staging vectors. We hit them hard enough, Grayson breathed. Not hard enough, Jacob said coldly. They'll regroup, but we've bled them. And bought time. Time for Earth's inner defenses to finish rearming. Time for battered ships to repair. Time for humanity to brace for the real storm still coming. Jacob exhaled slowly, voice steady. Helm, form on surviving elements. Reorient to defensive posture. We hold position until the main fleet arrives. Vengeance drifted to join the other scarred survivors, guns smoking, shields barely holding. But she was still flying, still fighting. Across the fleet net, weary voices called status, some proud, some grim, some barely clinging to life. But they were alive. Later, in the shattered remains of Vengeance's ready room, Jacob stood alone, helmet in one hand, eyes on the tactical feed still flickering on the cracked display. The main Yatari fleet was still on course. Massive, unbroken, they were coming. No doubt about that. And Earth's defenders were bleeding, ships wrecked, platforms damaged. No reinforcements yet, no miracle coming. But Jacob felt no fear. The enemy had already learned one hard truth today. Human ships didn't run. Human ships didn't surrender. And if this was to be humanity's last stand, he'd make damn sure the stars remembered them. He keyed the comm, voice like steel. All Blackout units, rest what you can. Rearm, recrew. We fight again when the enemy returns. He paused. And when they do, we finish what we started. The calm before the storm didn't feel like calm at all. It felt like waiting to drown. From Vengeance's bridge, Commander Jacob Holt watched the tactical feed. The Yatari main fleet was moving in system now, coordinated and relentless. No more scouting waves, no more vanguard tests. This was the death stroke. Over 500 enemy ships, carriers, heavy cruisers, dreadnought-class vessels, support platforms, an entire sector fleet gathered for one purpose, to finish the war. And Earth's defenses, a patchwork of damaged ships, half-repaired orbital platforms, and desperate crews running on adrenaline and sheer stubborn will. Jacob rubbed grit from his eyes and keyed the fleet channel. His voice was low, hard-edged, and clear. All blackout units, final battle stations. This is it. No retreat, no second line. We hold this line or humanity burns. Across the net came a flood of responses, some weary, some grim, but all resolute. They'd been through too much, seen too much, and there was no one left to take their place. "Commander," Grayson said quietly from the sensor console. "Enemy fleet ETA, 90 minutes. Jacob nodded. "What's the status of Vengeance?" Grayson didn't sugarcoat it. "Shields restored to 40%. Forward railguns at 80% capacity. Torpedo bays restocked, but aft thrusters still at half output. Hull integrity, 73%, with patchwork reinforcement. Not perfect, not close, but they could fight. That's all that mattered." Jacob looked around his bridge. Faces worn thin, uniforms bloodied and stained. Yet every crewman met his gaze with the same iron resolve. No one here was thinking of survival anymore. They were thinking of payback. "Good," Jacob said simply. "When they come, we give them hell." An hour later, Earth's inner defense grid powered to full. The scattered remnants of the fleet formed up in layers, orbital platforms, capital ships, and fast attack wings taking position along the final defensive shell around the planet. Vengeance led what was left of Blackout. No longer a full fleet, but still the sharpest blade Earth had left. Jacob stood at his command station, helmet sealed now, armored gauntlets gripping the rail. Grayson's voice came through tight and calm. "Enemy fleet breaking warp, entering engagement range." The stars flared, hard contacts blinking onto the tactical grid in sickening waves, hundreds of crimson signatures. Jacob keyed the fleet-wide net again. "This is it," he said. "They're coming for everything, and we show them that humanity does not kneel, no matter the cost. We make them pay for every inch." The reply was instant, a chorus of voices from every battered ship and station. "Hey, we fight! No surrender!" Jacob's jaw clenched. "Weapons free! All ships, engage!" The void exploded into fire. Vengeance's railguns fired in rippling salvos, hypervelocity rounds tearing through the lead enemy cruisers. Orbital platforms opened up, massive coil guns and particle beams lancing into the advancing Yatari lines. Enemy return fire came fast, sheets of plasma and missile clouds lighting the black. "Brace!" Grayson called as the first salvo struck. Vengeance shuddered violently, shields flaring dangerously, hull vibrating under the assault. "Shields holding, barely." "Keep firing," Jacob barked. "We hold this line." Across the net, human ships fought like demons, Iron Reaper ripping apart enemy escorts with brutal broadsides, Revenant leading a fighter wing into the heart of the Yatari carriers. But the enemy just kept coming. More ships, more guns, a tide of death, pushing harder with every second. "Multiple breaches on decks 4 and 6. Seal them." Jacob refused to blink. Every second they held, every enemy ship they killed, was another second Earth lived. "Target that dreadnought. Main batteries, all guns." Vengeance's railguns screamed again, rounds slamming into an advancing Yatari dreadnought, tearing through its outer armor. The enemy ship staggered, burning, but kept firing. Jacob's blood roared in his ears. "We take them down. One at a time. Stay on them." Minutes dragged into an eternity of fire and death. The Yatari fleet pressed harder, closing to brutal knife-fighting range. Human ships collided with enemy formations in a savage brawl, boarding actions, point-blank bombardments, desperate last stands. "Shields down to 20%, Grayson shouted. "Reroute emergency power," Jacob ordered. "Main reactor strained. Can't hold this output for long." Jacob's voice was cold. "Then we burn ourselves down with them if we have to." Another Yatari dreadnought loomed ahead, powering its main batteries for a killing blow. "Target lock! Fire, now!" Vengeance unleashed her last torpedo spread, massive antimatter warheads slamming into the enemy dreadnought's core. The Yatari ship detonated, its death lighting the black in a massive, blinding flare. But the cost was rising. "Deck 5 vented to space, heavy casualties. Hold the line," Jacob shouted, voice cutting through the chaos. And still the enemy came. Vengeance was bleeding now, whole sections offline, power flickering. But Jacob refused to pull back. "We fight until this ship dies," he told his crew. Or until they do. Then a sudden, sharp tone from Grayson's console. "Commander, new contacts, FTL traces, unknown vector." Jacob's eyes snapped to the display. "What is it?" Grayson's voice shook. "Reinforcements. Human." The screen lit up with fresh signatures, new ships tearing out of FTL at full burn, long-range heavy cruisers, reserve fleet elements, reinforcements from the outer colonies. "Sir, they heard the call. They came." For the first time in the battle, Jacob smiled, a grim, bloodied thing. "Then we finish this." He keyed the fleet-wide net one last time. "All units, press the attack. Reinforcements are here. We hold nothing back." And Vengeance surged forward one more time, battered, burning, but unbroken, leading the final charge into the heart of the Yatari fleet. The final battle had begun. And this time, humanity wasn't alone. The reinforcements hit the Yatari flank like a sledgehammer. Fresh human ships, newer designs, faster, leaner, ripped into the enemy formations with savage precision. Railguns, torpedoes, and particle beams flared across the void, cutting deep into the heart of the alien fleet. On the Bridge of Vengeance, Commander Jacob Holt stood braced against the command rail, watching the tide of battle turn. His ship was half dead, armor scorched black, 3 decks open to space, power flickering. But she was still fighting. So was he. Grayson's voice came tight through the smoke-choked bridge. "New fleet elements have engaged. Yatari formation is breaking, Commander. They're pulling back." Jacob's eyes narrowed. He didn't dare believe it yet. "Confirm. Are they retreating or regrouping?" Grayson's fingers flew across the console, sweat running down his face. "Multiple enemy ships initiating FTL spooling, vectoring out of system." For a moment, silence. Then the confirmation came. Enemy ships vanishing in bursts of FTL signatures, carriers first, then cruisers, then even some of the remaining dreadnoughts. The Yatari were cutting their losses. The human defense had held. And now it was biting back. Across the fleet-wide net, a wave of ragged, exhausted cheers erupted. "We broke them! They're running! Earth stands!" But on Vengeance's bridge, Jacob remained stone-faced. His voice was cold steel. "They're pulling back, for now. This war isn't over." He keyed the net himself, his voice carrying across every battered ship and station still holding the line. "All units, continue pursuit. Target any lagging vessels. We drive them out of Sol space. No quarter." The responses came back at once, hard, sharp, ready. "Aye, Commander!" Vengeance surged forward again, what was left of her main drives screaming, railguns firing. Around her, the human fleet pressed the attack, no longer just holding the line, but forcing the Yatari to retreat under fire. Jacob's blood roared in his ears as they closed on a straggling enemy cruiser. "Target lock! Fire all guns!" Vengeance's railguns hammered out another salvo, rounds punching through the crippled Yatari ship, ripping it apart in a cascade of explosions. Another kill. Another debt paid. Grayson's voice came through again, ragged but triumphant. "Enemy retreat is confirmed across all sectors, Commander. They're abandoning the assault." At last, the stars began to clear, red enemy signatures fading from the tactical grid. The battle was over. Earth had held. In the hours that followed, the survivors regrouped. Wreckage drifted in high orbit, twisted metal, shattered ships, debris from both sides. Vengeance limped back into defensive formation, barely flyable now, her hull little more than scorched plating and desperate patchwork. But her guns were still hot. Her crew was still alive. Jacob stood on the shattered bridge, helmet off, blood drying on his face. His voice was raw as he keyed the command net one final time. To all human ships, this is Commander Holt. The enemy is in retreat. Earth stands. Humanity stands. A pause. Then the net flooded with battered cheers. Some weeping, some laughing, all alive. Jacob looked to Grayson, who sat slumped at his console, face pale, but eyes bright with exhausted pride. "We did it," Grayson said softly. Jacob nodded once. "We bought time. That's what we needed." Grayson swallowed hard. At what cost? Jacob's gaze swept the ruined bridge, empty chairs where crewmates had fallen, flickering consoles, bulkheads scorched and buckled. He knew. They'd all paid in blood. But he also knew what would have happened if they hadn't. "The only cost that matters," Jacob said quietly, "is extinction." And that we stopped. Later, aboard Fortress Station Atlas, the surviving fleet commanders gathered in a makeshift command chamber, scarred, bloodied, but alive. Admiral Kestrel stood at the head of the table, her uniform torn, one arm in a sling, but her voice unwavering. "Today," she said, "you bought humanity a future." Against odds no sane commander would have accepted. You held the line. You drove them back. A grim murmur rippled through the room. No one here was looking for medals. They all knew how close the blade had come. Kestrel's gaze met Jacob's across the table. "Commander Holt, your actions at Saturn and here at Earth turned this war. Without Blackout Fleet's actions, we would have fallen." Jacob's voice was low, steady. "We held the line. That's all." Kestrel nodded. "And we will again. Because this war isn't over. The Atari will come back, in greater numbers, with greater fury." She straightened. "But now, they know. They've bled. They've feared us." The room was silent, every commander listening. "When they return," Kestrel said coldly, "they'll find us ready. And this time, we won't just hold the line." A grim, hard smile touched Jacob's mouth. "We'll take the fight to them." Back aboard Vengeance, Jacob stood alone on the observation deck, gazing out at Earth below, a planet that should have been ash, a world saved by blood and steel. His ship was crippled, his crew gutted. But the war had changed. Humanity had changed. And so had he. When the Atari came back, and they would, he'd be ready. Vengeance would be ready. And this time they wouldn't just survive. They'd hunt. They'd burn Yatari worlds. They'd show the galaxy once and for all. Humans were not prey. And this war was far from finished.